Hello, everyone. We're going to wait another minute or so while everyone makes their way into our room. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can provide your name, your organization, and why you're interested in this breakout session, and that would be great. Thank you, Jacqueline. Again, if you can, please introduce yourself using the chat. You can provide your name and your organization, and hopefully why you're interested in this breakout topic. All right. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Please feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. We welcome that. My name is Miranda Richardson. I am CEO and principal with MWR Coaching and Consulting, and I'm excited to be with you all to facilitate today's breakout dialogue conversation around neighborhood and community investment. As we're walking through today's conversation, just want to share a couple of housekeeping things with you all just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I'm joined today by Seamus Saunders from the Social Policy Institute. Seamus will monitor the chat and flag any questions or comments you send there. So please feel free to use the chat. We are checking the chat. You are in the breakout room for the neighborhood and community investment. With that being said, you are free to move about. We have some awesome breakout sessions today. However, we recognize that there is value in sticking with one given the short amount of time. And so I'm excited that you all have decided to be in the neighborhood and community investment breakout session. In a few moments, we will have a short presentation from Jenny Connelly-Bowen from the Community Builder Network. And from there, we will get a chance to hear how they're working to impact inclusive growth policies and practice in that space. Then we'll dive right into conversation with one another. Again, feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat, and we will be getting started in one moment. Thank you. As we are also preparing for our presentation, as a reminder, our hope is that we'll walk away today having identified someone in this space or in this breakout room that you can collaborate with or learn from, and a specific way you can put into practice what we've discussed today. We will use Jamboard throughout the session, along with Zoom, to help collaborate and engage with the content around today's discussion. Jamboard is essentially a digital whiteboard. Everyone can respectfully add their thoughts and their ideas. We will ask you to open Jamboard throughout our conversation today, in addition to turning on your video and speaking out loud. Again, the chat function is there. Should you decide to use the chat, again, we'll be checking that as well. Please refer to the chat for a link to the Jamboard and instructions for using the tool. It's pretty easy, it's straightforward. Again, it's just a digital whiteboard and a way to collect information in real time. As you make your way to Jamboard, you'll see a list.
Everyone, I just want to let you know if you're still on the call for the Activating Inclusive Growth in St. Louis, we have moved to the breakout session, and you can find the link to the breakout session in your chat. Just click that link and it'll take you exactly where you need to go. We are going to close this webinar shortly. Everyone will be in the breakout rooms. You can access those using the link in your chat. If you get disconnected at any point along the way, you can also access that link in your registration email through Eventbrite. We'll see you all soon.
All right, that's our reminder that we're supposed to be in the breakout room. So as you make your way to Jamboard, again, the link is in the chat. You'll see a list of community guidelines on the first slide. These are guidelines that have been adopted from the Academy for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Washington University. And so feel free to unmute yourself to indicate you'd like to speak, or share your thoughts in the chat. You can even use the react button to give a thumbs up as well. So as we're taking a moment to reflect on the information that's provided on the Jamboard, I just want to take a moment to reflect in terms of reading out loud, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Again, these are our community agreements. Being present, make space, take space, speak from personal experience. What is said here stays here. What is learned here leaves here. Listen to understand, as well as assume good intentions, and speak in the I, not the we. And so with that, I'm going to give you a second to just kind of reflect on the community agreements. And if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and or feel free to unmute yourself with any questions.
Where are the questions for the agreement, the community agreement? You said there's some questions to reflect on.
Oh, no, I was just sharing out loud, reading out loud the community agreements. Be present, make space, take space. Are you able to see on the screen the Jamboard slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Is everyone else able to see the slide okay? Okay. All right. Again, feel free to unmute yourself when you're ready to speak, or use the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. So while we're taking a look at the Jamboard, we're going to move into our next slide using the arrow at the top of the middle of the Jamboard. On this slide, you'll see just a few of the policy or practice priorities that were mentioned at our previous event related to financial inclusion. These are things that previous speakers identified as ways we can be more inclusive. As you read through these, feel free to drag a star. So you'll notice the toolbar is to the left, to drag a star over the action items that resonates the most with you. You can also use the sticky notes on the left to add something that you think may be missing. So we're placing a star over what resonates with us. And then if something is missing that we would like to capture, we're using a sticky note function to be able to add that information. And so I'll give you all a moment to do that.
So how do I copy the star? Copy me and then drag and click and drag? How do I copy the star?
Oh, the star. So you're placing a star over what resonates the most.
Right.
And so you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner where it says copy me, then click and drag.
So do I tap on it? How do I get copy me? I click on the star.
So you'll want to right click on the star and press this duplicate button here, and then you should be able to make a new star and be able to drag it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So do I have I'm actually on my phone. Was that going to allow me to do this? Because I'm trying to move the star up to invest in sustainable and responsible revitalization. So when I click on the star, I don't have a mouse to right click, so.
I am not 100% certain about the phone version. I've not used it previously. You can try maybe like holding the star, and that might work. Sometimes that helps, but I am not sure.
It did not work. I tried it. It did not work.
Okay.
I can drag a star over for you on your behalf. You said the invest in sustainable and responsible revitalization.
Correct.
Thank
Awesome,
you.
you got it.
And so we'll take 10 more seconds. Feel free to place the star with what resonates the most. And if you don't see something up there that you feel is very important that we want to make sure that we capture, feel free to add a sticky and capture that information on your Post-it. All right.
Nope, can't get a sticky either.
If you chat one of us your what you want to put on the sticky, Sheila, we can definitely, one of us can add it for you, unless that feels weird.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Connect. Oh God, how do I want to say this? The sticky I want to have on, it's the sticky I want to have on there. I wanted to address more personable connections. You know, investing in sustainable, responsible renovation and find. We need. I believe there needs to be some more direct personal connections with all the players, not, just all the players. We need to connect on a more personal, caring level. So how do we do that? It makes sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does. I'm capturing it now. More direct, personable, and caring connections among all the players in the ecosystem.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jenny. And as we're capturing this information, I definitely want to say thank you all, one, for being in this breakout room, but then also contributing to the Jamboard in terms of providing additional information and also including the stars next to what resonates with you the most. And what I'm seeing that's kind of bubbling up in terms of what we've captured so far, it's around investment, around opportunity / access, and data. And so and the connection to community. And so definitely want to say thank you all for participating in this exercise. Again, the Jamboard is a white digital board. It's a way for us to capture the information in real time. And so thank you for elevating the access and opportunities, the investment, the data, community connections, and so forth. So with that, today we have the Community Builders Network joining us to share a little about how they are doing just that. I'd like to pass the conversation to Jenny Connelly-Bowen to share more. Then we'll discuss and we'll collaborate. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenny, who is the Executive Director of Community Builders Network.
Thank you very much, Miranda. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. All right. Can you guys all see the presentation? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Just getting my windows arranged over here. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you all so much again for inviting me to share a few thoughts today. I'm really honored to be in the room with such incredible leaders and change makers. As Miranda said, I am Jenny Connelly-Bowen. I currently serve as Executive Director with the Community Builders Network of Metro St. Louis. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the work that CBN has been doing over the past 3 to 4 years to support our region's affordable housing trust funds and affordable housing ecosystem at large. You actually already heard some awesome information about the city's affordable housing trust fund from April Ford Griffin during the main session. So I'm really grateful for that. It'll save us a little bit of time on our presentation. And first, a really quick note about CBN for those who don't know us, just for some context. We are a coalition of community building organizations that believe strong, inclusive communities are the building blocks for a better St. Louis. So about half of our member organizations are place-based nonprofits that are doing community development work in neighborhoods. This is largely community development corporations or CDCs. And then the other half of our members are folks who support that place-based work with resources, connections, and expertise. So that largely includes banks and other financial institutions, government entities, regional nonprofits, private developers, and lots more. As we all know, it takes a big table of people to make community development work possible. So I share that as context so that you know that many of our member organizations work on affordable housing, as I'm sure you might imagine based on what I just said. And that's how this issue ended up on our radar. So let's advance to the next slide. So the issue I'm going to talk about today, or I'm actually going to talk about a couple issues, but the first issue that kind of brought this up for us was that in 2018, St. Louis City's Affordable Housing Trust Fund had been underfunded for at least 5 years. And this means, you probably remember from what April Ford Griffin mentioned earlier, this means that it was funded below the $5 million legally mandated minimum. So what is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? I can actually gloss over this a little bit because you heard such a great intro from April during the main session. And I also want to remind everyone that we have April in the room with us, and she is obviously a much better expert in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund than I am. So I want to invite her to chime in if I misspeak at some point, but I'm really grateful to have her in the room with us. As April shared earlier, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is administered by the City of St. Louis's Affordable Housing Commission and is funded by the city's local use tax. And in a nutshell, it awards loans and grants to develop affordable housing projects and provide housing related services, which covers a big wide variety of things, but includes things like accessibility modifications, home repair, and support for the homeless. And on the right here is a copy of, it's a little old, but it's a brief that about the trust fund that a past practicum student with us made back in 2018, and it's available on our website for you guys to access if you're interested. So why does it matter if the trust fund is underfunded? The trust fund at its core is an extremely critical resource for providing support to St. Louis's most vulnerable residents and creating a more inclusive community, which is obviously what this forum is about today. And that actually, again, as April mentioned earlier, it starts with the core functions and regulations of the trust fund. First of all trust fund dollars awarded must benefit families and individuals with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. And on top of that, 40% of the funds awarded must benefit those earning 20% or less of the area median income. So this is especially relevant now, as many of you may have seen already in the recently released Affordable Housing Report Card, which I will touch on a little bit later. That data has confirmed that our region is really struggling to provide enough affordable housing to folks making 30% or less of the area median income. So it was just it's been a reminder, among many other things, that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is a more important resource than ever. So April shared some of these stats too, but a few things to just kind of remind you. So since 2003, the trust fund has invested $34.4 million into rental and for sale housing projects, which has created over 2,000 affordable homes. And it's also a big driver of outside investment in affordable housing. So again, April shared this, but for every trust fund dollar invested in affordable housing construction projects since 2003, $18.55 has been invested by outside public and private dollars. So again, big leverager of outside resources, which is fantastic. It's also worth noting, I think, that I know we're seeing an influx of federal funding now for the first time in a long time because of the pandemic, but for many, many years, the trust fund has been an especially important resource in a landscape where federal and state dollars for housing and community development work in the St. Louis region have shrunk over time. So for example, back when we first started working on this, we pulled up some data that showed that between 2003 and 2016, community development block grant dollars allocated to St. Louis fell a whopping 53%. A lot of place-based and community building organizations rely on that type of funding to make their work possible. And so again, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is an incredibly important stopgap. And as many of you may remember, the Missouri Low-Income Housing Tax Credit was also out of commission for a few years. It's finally back online now, but federal and state funding has been hard to come by in recent years. So it makes the Affordable Housing Trust Fund even more important. And I think it's also worth noting, even while we are seeing more federal investment than in years past, the trust fund has much less burdensome regulation and oversight requirements than state and federal funding does, which is really key from an equity perspective. We work with a lot of very, very small organizations that really struggle to have the time and the resources to do a lot of the federal reporting that the federal and state grants require. So that's definitely something that is appreciated about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Also, one more quick sidebar before I move on. I want to note that the city's Affordable Housing Commission team has always been incredibly generous and open with us as we've worked on this issue during those very early days up until now. April, who's on the call today, has always been very supportive of our efforts, and Loretta Heiner in the Affordable Housing Commission office has also helped by sharing data with us that we were able to use for briefs and other communications. So as we talk about solutions, that's just a really quick plug to try to build relationships with the experts whenever you can, because they're the folks that you need to really understand what the full scope of what's going on. So thank you again to the Affordable Housing Commission team for your amazing work that you are doing. All right, moving on to the solution that we came up with. So our solution to this issue, again, of trying to get the trust fund fully funded again, was to convene a quote convene a coalition of surprising stakeholders who all care about affordable housing to advocate together. So this was the birth of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition convenes stakeholders from a variety of sectors, which includes education, development, health, housing, human services, lots more actually, that actively support increased funding and a greater role for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. So this next slide is some photos of the coalition in action. This group's advocacy has varied a lot over time. They've taken a lot of different approaches to try to kind of spread the word about why the trust fund matters and raise awareness about why we need to put more funding into it. This has included testifying at public hearings, spreading awareness publicly, including via social media, by word of mouth, at meetings, all those good things. In 2019, this is a picture of this on the bottom left. We even led a postcard campaign about why the trust fund is important. We actually still have those postcards in our office. It's kind of fun to look at them still sometimes. One of the most critical things, as I alluded to before, has been building strong relationships with policymakers and officials that are overseeing and administering our region's affordable housing trust funds. So obviously being in closer communication with each other has helped us push for bigger changes more effectively as partners in the ecosystem. But I want to point out too that it's also helped in smaller ways. So for example, over the past few years, it's been really great. We've been grateful for this. The City of St. Louis Affordable Housing Commission staff has prepared presentations about how to apply for trust fund dollars, which didn't exist before. And this has facilitated a much smoother process for member organizations and partners who are trying to apply for funds, especially folks who are applying for the first time or maybe are smaller organizations and again, don't have the capacity that maybe a larger organization would have to build up that expertise. So that's all just to say that I really want to emphasize, we think it's really important when you're doing, excuse me, policy and advocacy and change work, not to lose sight of those smaller markers of progress along the way, because sometimes it's easy to get lost in the ocean of bigger things that you're trying to change, but those benchmarks along the way, the smaller things are really important. So result number one, the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund was fully funded in fiscal year 2019, which if any of you know how the fiscal years work, fiscal year 2019 would have started in, correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone who knows better than me, please jump in if I'm wrong, but fiscal year 2019 would have started in June of 2018, I believe. So this would have been in June of 2018, it was announced that that's when the funding for fiscal 19 was starting. But so a quick timeline on that. Don't have a ton of time to get into all the details, but I can share a little bit of how that trajectory has evolved. So in 2018, when the coalition first came together, they led their first advocacy push to try to get funding from the passage of Prop 1, which was in April of 2017. They wanted to get about 50% of that new use tax funding, which was about $2 million, allocated to the trust fund, which would have brought it up above the, not only just up to the legally mandated minimum, but also above that. So they wanted to get an extra $2 million for the trust fund. That did not happen as a result of the advocacy push, but it was fully funded plus a little bit more for the first time since 2011. So that was fantastic. And we were really grateful for that. It got up to about 5.5 million, which again is over that $5 million minimum. Then in 2019, the following year, the coalition continued to push for more funding and they increased their ask to 10 million. They wanted to get an extra 10 million in there. And we didn't quite get there, but we did get about $1 million more. So it was allocated up to about 6.5 million total, which was again, fantastic. Then in 2020, we had the pandemic. So in 2020, the trust fund was threatened to lose some funding due to revenue cuts related to COVID. As we all know, municipalities were suffering big time alongside the rest of us. But the coalition advocacy helped to keep funding at 6.5 million, which was level with the previous year. And that ended up including about 1.5 million in CARES Act funding. And that we thought was really significant and a big win, again, given the fact that there were budget cuts left and right, the fact that the city committed to still maintaining investment in this really important fund and this really important issue, just we thought was really fantastic. And then this past year in 2021, the trust fund was once again threatened with some funding cuts related to the pandemic, but the city's Board of Estimate and Apportionment, can't say that word, reversed course and then maintained funding for the trust fund at 6.5 million. So again, that was fantastic. And unlike last year, that was all from local use tax dollars. So in a sense, it was an increase from previous year's investments because it didn't include any federal funding. It was all local funding. So again, that was awesome. Really grateful for that. So that was all happening in the city. And I want to note too that in the county, meanwhile, the St. Louis County established its first affordable housing trust fund in 2019. And this was also in partnership with, well, lots of different actors that went into this, but the coalition helped things along. So establishing a trust fund for the county was first recommended by the St. Louis County's Affordable Housing Trust Fund Task Force. And the coalition, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition, collaborated with Councilwoman Lisa Clancy and County Executive Staff Member Shannon Koenig to help pass the legislation, which was signed into law at the end of December 2019. You can see in this bottom right-hand picture, it's one of my favorites. Currently, its only dedicated funding source is sales tax on medical marijuana. And in 2019, it was estimated that this could generate maybe up to $50,000 annually. But a 2019 county commissioned report recommended eventually getting at least 30 to 35 million into the trust fund annually. So we know this 50K is obviously a drop in the bucket, but it's a start. And if anyone here knows more than I do about how that's evolved in the past 6 to 12 months, please let me know and feel free to chime in. And then the last thing I'll say, because I think we're almost out of time, or if not completely out of time, just for a more contemporary note, pulling back to what I talked about earlier. One of the recurring themes that came up for the coalition over their years of working on affordable housing advocacy together was that we really need to have a better sense, a more accurate sense of what the affordable housing needs are in the St. Louis region. And we need to be able to effectively communicate about them. I remember this came up a lot as the coalition would meet and decide, okay, how much do we want to advocate for this year? How much do we want to try to push to get more into the fund? And we know that we don't have enough affordable housing resources currently available in St. Louis. We've known that for a long time. But in recent years, we just haven't had the tools we've needed to accurately grasp the full scope of that need. Excuse me. So as a solution, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition decided they wanted to pursue this project. And we collaborated to produce the new St. Louis Affordable Housing Report Card, which we hope changes this landscape of not really having a full sense of the scope of affordable housing needs in our region. This was produced thanks in part to a grant from the Deaconess Foundation, who funded the project, and in partnership with consultants Christina Garmendia of UrbanRx and Jessica Payne of OCO Design and Engagement, who were the lead consultants on the project. And basically, the report card was created as an accessible, easy to use tool for community organizations, housing advocates, regional decision makers, and residents in St. Louis City and County, it's like all of you, who want to see growth in and more equitable use of affordable housing resources. So it includes both a website and a more condensed report brief, which are all available online. And I can drop a link to that in the chat in a little bit. But just a few notes on why this is unique. So reports have been released about affordable housing in the past, certainly, but they've all been focused on St. Louis City and St. Louis County separately, never united into one report like this, and never as a simple report card, which you will see if you look at the website and the report brief. And speaking of simple, sometimes, as I'm sure many of you know, when data does come out in reports, it can be pretty wonky and inaccessible and really only available to folks who have a lot of experience with data. So the goal of this report card was really to make the data accessible and usable, a tool that truly anybody can pick up and use to advocate or create work on projects in their neighborhood and really anything in between. We hope it starts conversations and gives community leaders like you the tools you need to make your own recommendations, and also provides policymakers and elected officials, again, like you, with data you can use to better understand housing needs and track progress. I think one of the most powerful things about the report card is that it breaks down how skewed our region's housing affordability issues are. So you'll see, if you look at it, that for some people, like households earning over the region's median income, are areas really rich in naturally affordable housing, which you probably hear people talk about a lot. St. Louis is a really affordable place to live. Well, it isn't for everybody, including for Black households and most renters. For many folks in the region, affordable housing is really hard to find. And this report card breaks that down in an easy to understand way. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat in a moment. But before I wrap up, a couple notes on next steps with the report card. This is all thanks to generous support from Flourish St. Louis. We got a grant from them to work on this earlier this year. So over the coming months, BlackRock Consulting will be conducting report card engagement sessions in targeted geographies experiencing the greatest levels of infant mortality, which are nearly all predominantly Black neighborhoods. So here's a couple some info about some sessions that are coming up. Again, all that stuff is on the website, which I can drop in the chat in a moment. And we're also currently convening a peer group of CBN member organizations that are working on affordable housing advocacy, which is both being informed by that report card and also informing CBN's future advocacy strategies and the coalition's future advocacy strategies. So that is all from me. I know it was a lot of info I dumped on you in a short amount of time, but I'm looking forward to being in conversation with you and happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing such wonderful information and updates as it pertains to the awesome work that you all are doing at CBN. I want to open up the floor for discussion. As you all know, that we'll be wrapping up pretty soon, but we also want to create the space for questions and discussion around what we're talking about with neighborhood and community investment. And so with that, if we could, please head over to Jamboard. Again, the link is in the chat if you don't have it up already. If you're on your phone, there's an app that you can download that will likely make it more user-friendly in terms of being able to utilize Jamboard. But if we could head over to Jamboard, that'd be great. We want to know who's in the room and where you can find synergy. Again, this is an opportunity to learn, but then also take the information back outside of this time, of this space, so that we can continue the conversation and the work itself. And so on slide 4, feel free to use a sticky note to add your name, your organization, and a very brief sentence around the work or the policy or practice that you're implementing to be more inclusive as it pertains to education, training, and tech. And so I'll give you all a moment to do that. Again, taking a sticky note, adding your name or organization, and a sentence about the policy or practice you're implementing to create more inclusive neighborhoods and community investments. And we'll continue this discussion on Zoom as well. So feel free to turn on your cameras once we get to that moment to continue the discussion. But right now, if you can find a sticky note and add that information, that would be great. Right. Others?
I haven't gotten around to downloading the app yet, so can I get someone to do my sticky note for me?
Sure. Or if you don't have the information on, if you can't access Jamboard,
No, I see it, but I can't do it.
Right, totally understand. Feel free to use the chat as well to type in
okay.
your information, because we all should be able to access
Got
the
it.
chat. So chat
Okay.
or Jamboard, we want to know who's in the room. And again, like, this is thinking beyond today's conversation. How do we continue to do the work outside of this space? And so part of that is like knowing who's in the room and who's doing some of the work so that we can continue the conversation. Seamus, is there any way we can make the screen a little bigger? The Jamboard screen?
Yeah, let me
Thank
see.
you. Again, feel free to put your information in Jamboard, as well as use the chat if you're not able to access it by way of the app or the link. All right, we have a couple up now. Looking for a few more. Thank you. All right. So like, I mean, keeping the conversation rolling, feel free to continue to put information up on the Jamboard. But Tony Smith, I see you at Delmar Main Streets. Brand new nonprofit. Congratulations, with a mission to bring economic development to both sides of Delmar. We made sure and will continue to have representation. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work you all are doing around inclusion as it pertains to education, training, and tech?
Well, since we're like really brand new, like we just formed, we're going to be working on all of those things starting next year. Is within our, they have 4 different pillars of concentration. So technology, like digital equity is important. So that will be making sure that our shop owners and the property owners along Delmar have that digital access and have that training. And then what was the other one?
Oh, the education, training, and tech.
Yeah, education, especially with shop owners, them knowing, understanding the importance of the banking relationship, understanding the importance of having a business plan is something else that we want to do. So then hopefully there will never be a pandemic again, but whatever kind of emergency there is that comes up, they know how to pivot. They have a website. They know, they have a plan B in place.
Thank you. Anyone else who have provided information, whether it's by Jamboard or chat, who would like to share what they're working on and how they are, the work they're doing, how they're being successful, and how they're addressing any barriers that may be coming up in terms of the work itself? I mean, the pandemic has been somewhat of a barrier for most of us in terms of like regrouping, in terms of how we do our work and our connections with community. Are there any other highlights that we would like to lift up in today's conversation around our work as it pertains to inclusion with education, training, and tech, and what we're doing to support this work overall? Olivia, if you wouldn't mind, can I call on you to kind of talk about the work that you all are doing at the Brown School as it pertains to the inclusion piece around training, tech, and education?
Yeah, so I'm a first semester student in my concentration year around domestic social economic development. And so I'm still like learning myself. But I would say that, I mean, in some of my courses, a lot of, one piece of like, I study systems dynamics, and that's an interesting piece of technology and skills that can be learned to not only, really think about these complex issues, but also engage communities. And that's something cool. I think the Brown School is preparing social work and public health students to do. And then just learning about lots of different models and ways that we can do this work without harming communities. It's a big task, so much to learn. What else? And it's just kind of really critically thinking about like these social systems and institutions and, what they do and what we can do to interrupt them. And that's very general. Happy to answer any specific questions or dive deeper into something though.
No, that was great. And no, there are tons of organizations who are affiliated with the work today. And the work that you all are doing as students, I imagine that these are opportunities for synergy, alignment around internships, practicums, and also thinking about how we can continue the learning both in the classroom, but outside of the classroom as well. So thank you for providing information about what you all are taking on as students at the Brown School in your major. So thank you for that. As we continue the conversation or the discussion around on the Zoom platform, please feel free to turn on your video if you feel comfortable. Again, we have the video, it's being able to speak out loud or using the chat function, whichever works best for you. And so thank you all again for participating on the Jamboard as well. I just want to ask a couple of questions to kind of get a sense of like where we are in this space. And also understanding like what's on your mind when we think about like the full gamut of information that has been disclosed throughout the series, and recognizing that today is the last series. What is on your mind after listening to these presentations today and or previous presentations, as you're thinking about your reflections on the policies and practices around inclusion, and today around neighborhood and community investments?
I like to share a thought.
Sure.
I'm now a retired person. I'm 66 years old. I'll be 67 on Saturday.
Happy birthday, early happy birthday.
Thank you. I was reading and having experienced a lot of what I consider lack of emotional intelligence in how we develop our policies and our regulations. And I'm just wondering, is that something that you all are picking up on also? I mean, that would be a different approach to, working out all these issues that we have. And I'm just curious, has your organizations, people in your organizations actually have taken on a serious look at how we're addressing people? If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you for that, Sheila. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, April, or any of the participants who are affiliated with organizations who may want to respond to that question. Great question. Thank you.
That is a great question. And I believe I said your name wrong earlier. I read it as Sheila. I apologize about that. Is it Sheila?
No,
okay.
It is Sheila, yes.
Okay,
yes.
I saw that I was slipping the I and the L in my mind. So, okay, I'm glad I didn't pronounce it incorrectly. So one thing that definitely has been top of mind for us during the pandemic is, I mean, a lot of our work is focused on gathering people together and working at the coalition level and helping folks find solutions together around a shared table. And certainly that's looked really different during the pandemic, as we've all been gathering virtually. And something that I think has been even more important than ever is to maintain space for folks to connect with each other as humans, not just like as representatives of the organizations they're representing, but as people. And that's been harder to do in a virtual setting, but we've been trying to carve out special space at each of our meetings for folks to intentionally do that, because it needs to be a lot more intentional. I'm not adding much to as a response to your question. I've got to mull over a little bit, but I've just to say, as a sort of rejoinder, I hear you, and I definitely feel that. I think space to connect as humans is one of the most important and powerful things we can do if we want to facilitate change in our communities.
It just seems so lacking for me. It just seems so lacking. Just the whole culture is just lacking, and I think it'll make a difference if we just get to know each other. Just care for each other. Just care for each other.
Thank you for that question. Is there anything that surprised you all as it pertains to what was presented today in today's session or any of the previous sessions? Any information that was captured through our conversations? Sure, we have a hand up.
Yes. This is Jacqueline Buck Horton. I work for Sterling Bank as a community development specialist. I've only been in this space for 4 years. It'll be 4 years, January the 8th. And really glad to be a community leader here in this space and really representing and trying to represent affordable housing and really creating home ownership for low to moderate income neighborhoods and people. One of the problems that I've seen is huge is the time frame that money gets to the government, and the government actually gets the funding out for a variety of reasons. And I think that is one of the huge, it's a huge problem that, makes people get a little discouraged about, applying for some of the funding available, as well as, some of the other issues, that people have with even making application. When the CARES money came out for rental assistance, the money just sat there in some of the nonprofit agencies because they didn't have people to actually funnel the money out, or there were people who didn't have the technology, that weren't tech savvy enough to really push that button. And again, and I'd have to give kudos out to April, Ford Griffin, and Jenny. I know you guys have been working diligently in all of your efforts too. So thanks for all you guys do. It's
Thank
just a
you.
comment.
I appreciate it. As we think about what we've talked about today around, affordable housing, access, and things of that nature, I definitely want to create the space for you, April, if you would like to chime in response to either of the comments/questions that have been presented so far.
Yes, I would say on both of them, I agree. In terms of what Ms. Sheila said, I think it is the culture, and I don't know if that will go back. Because I mean, when you look at systems, you look at the way we pay our bills, you look at the way we shop, you look at the way we have to communicate with our kids, teachers, on and on. I mean, technology is of great value to us, and it's great, but there's also been a lot that we lose in terms of being used to having a personal touch, a personal connection with people in our socialization, in our the way we carry out business, even the way our kids are learning now. And it certainly has left some people behind, from our children to our seniors to the ages all in between there. So I'm in agreement with her. I would like to see things at least make sure that there are efforts to have that personal connection. One thing I enjoyed when I was in political office was having monthly ward meetings each month, being able to talk to people, touch people, meaning hear their stories, hear their experiences, and then being able to take that back to City Hall and try to see how we can address those needs. In terms of the lack of responsiveness in a timely fashion, when we get these millions of dollars in stimulus funds and federal dollars, yes, that's great. But at the same time, oftentimes the public doesn't know that we don't have structures in place to be able to implement these new policies and these new programs. So just getting some additional funding in stimulus funds ourselves at the Affordable Housing Commission this summer, we're experiencing that ourselves. So we have to read those federal guidelines, make sure we interpret them correctly. There's not one place for us to go to. And so we're all figuring it out as we go, create new applications, new structures with the same staff that's already working to capacity, on top of also experiencing staff shortages. And so it's challenging, and the city and the government isn't exempt from those same challenges that the small businesses and the large businesses and the schools and others experience. And so it's part of trying to work through it, to still try to meet the need, be accountable for what we are authorized to do, and try to do it to the best of our ability. And I think, once again, for us, partnership is important. Even listening to the young lady who's a student, it just had me thinking once again, how can even our department and agencies receive more interaction and partnerships with getting students who can assist us in doing some of the things we simply don't have the time and capacity to do when you're trying to get the money out and do it in a way that you are following all compliance. And so, you know, some other assessments and analysis, those are great. But in government, most government entities and within the local government structure, you don't have many departments that are set up to do that outside of what their mission is. And so, you know, it's all needed. And I think that we are all pushing to do the best that we can with what we have, but having these conversations and being included in them is valuable to just see what others are doing and what they have to offer, and then being able to have opportunities to follow up.
Thank you. As we begin to wrap up this breakout session, I definitely want to create a space, should there be any additional questions around, like, are there any questions or challenges that you all still feel that you may have about policy or practice change that others in the room might be able to answer? I was scrolling through the chat and I'm reflecting on the Jamboard. We have a lot of expertise in this room. And so given that we don't want to just be talking at you, this is also an opportunity to get your questions answered. And so if there are additional questions you may have around the policy or practice for others in the room, this is a great time to take a moment and ask those questions, right? We're all in the room together. The expertise is here. So I'll stop talking to create the space for you all to ask any questions that you may have, given who's in this room. Now let's not all get shy. Feel free to use the chat if you have a question, or you can unmute yourself and share your question out loud as well, or comment. Okay, no questions or comments? All right.
Well, I have a comment, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm beating beating the message to death here.
Go ahead.
But it's just I just feel so strongly that that idea of emotional intelligence is really something that, you know, should be really looked at inside these organizations and these corporations. We have so, oh my gosh, how can I say this? There is so much effort and work into, and I appreciate what you all are doing, and I know you care about what you're doing, and that's great. But I guess I'm fighting for a more intense level of caring for what you all are doing at the base of what you're doing, which are the people that you work with, not just the folks you see in your office. You know, you all there serving, you know, we're serving other people. And how close are we willing to get to do that? And I think that's what will make a difference in the way we set our policies and our rules. So my soapbox.
No, I mean, the human interaction, the relational piece, the authentic engagement. I mean, it all accounts for like our future work, like how we move forward in this space. So definitely don't want to minimize. I definitely want to underscore and elevate the importance. I'm in agreement. I think most people on the call in this session, would agree the importance of that connection, the human connection and emotional intelligence as we do this work. And thinking beyond what our inward approach, what's in our office, but thinking about community as a whole as well. So definitely appreciate you elevating that as well.
You can count on that.
Yes. Jenny, did you have something you wanted to add? I'm sorry. I saw your hand. Oh, okay. I saw your hand move. I didn't know.
I was about to say I talk with my hands, but I also listen with my hands. So No, thank you for asking.
Of course, of course. And I know that we didn't have a lot of time today, but we definitely wanted to create this space for discussion and questions. So again, I thank you all for being a part of today's conversation. Before we head back into the main room, please take a moment to reflect on not only this discussion, but thinking about the entire series of discussions that we've had to date. Use the link in the chat to submit one thing you or your organization has the capacity to act on in the next 2 months. Again, we don't want to just focus on discussion, but thinking about action, like what are our steps to move things forward? And so what is one thing that you or your organization can focus on over the next couple of months to move this work forward will be important. Also thinking about one person or organization you may want to connect with as a result of these series. So again, there's work happening outside of these sessions. So how do we continue these conversations as well as forward motion and action to deliver this work? Again, that link is now in the chat. So please feel free to use it to be able to list out what you're going to be working on. Again, we're going back into the main room. Thank you all today for your time and your participation. It has been a pleasure to facilitate today's conversation. I'm Maranda Richardson with MWR Coaching and Consulting, and we will be moving slowly back into the breakout session, but if you can, please use the link to identify an area that your organization will be focused on.
Thank you, Maranda.
Thank you, Jenny, for your time today and your expertise. Greatly appreciate it. Exciting work that is happening at CBN. Feel free to reach out to CBN if your organization has some ways to align with the work that's happening within their organization.
Thank you, Maranda. And thank you, Seamus, too, for keeping us all coordinated.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and presentation that took place in our breakout rooms. Thank you for all the presenters and everyone in the audience for your participation and engagement. I know it's hard to sit for 3 hours for a Zoom event, but your contribution is so, so important to us. As we said from the beginning, the purpose of today is to provide space for collaboration and discussion, as well as to give you tools to identify and commit to making St. Louis a more inclusive place. In the breakout session, we ask you to write down a commitment. If you use the link that we provided to submit your commitment, you will receive a copy of it in your email as a way to hold yourself accountable and for us to remind you. We also ask you to identify someone in the room you could collaborate with or learn from. We will share out a contact list to make this easier for you. You're in this event today because you are serious about inclusive growth in St. Louis and you want to be part of building a more equitable economy that works for everyone. That's why we are here. For me, this event series was just the beginning of our work. It just helped us to learn what needs to be done. And now we are committed to continue the very important work that is ahead of us. We have learned so much from our conversation with all of you over the past year and a half. We have heard about the challenges preventing inclusive growth in St. Louis, and we have heard from people and organizations working in the community to address these challenges with bold solutions. We will continue to champion inclusive and equity in everything we do. Here is what we are committing today. We as Social Policy Institute. First, our commitment is to expand this conversation today by partnering with organizations in the community to evaluate their model and scale up promising solutions for larger impact in St. Louis. Second, We are committed to being very intentional about increasing the representation on our team in our research, ensuring that we are partnering with people in the community who are impacted by our funding and throughout the process. Third, we will continue to align ourselves with the larger Washington University in St. Louis for St. Louis initiative. We are excited about the university commitment to the new St. Louis Anchor Action Network with other stakeholders who are committed to reducing inequality. Thank you again for our wonderful committee and for all the hard work. We are so thankful for all of you. And to MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth for making this conversation a reality. And thank you everyone who listening here today. Thank you for your participation, support, and your passion for more equitable St. Louis. Thanks again and have a wonderful afternoon.